I want to welcome you all for coming. I want to welcome you all for coming. My name is Gregory Reed, for those who don't know me. At the same time, I'm a cultural preservationist. That's what I do, and that's what I do is preserve culture. My job in terms of is to enlighten you as well as bring forward in terms of information that you may not even be aware of that gives you greater insight of being more collaborative, more togetherness, all through things that have been covered up. And what I have done over the years in terms of is given my life in terms of educating people, and my people particularly. I have committed myself for years. That is my life work. And you would actually be getting a very brief sketch of it. And what I have done in terms of how to bring forth our documentary work and merge that to enlighten people in preserving culture. I was introduced to a person, her name is Marta, that many of you all know, right here. And I saw her work.
Push past the pole.
She was
Right there, pole.
I saw her work and I recognized the gift that she had, and so then I wanted to move that forward in terms of enlightening others. See, we get too much caught on color when you really should be dealing with mindsets. It's amazing to me how so many people get caught up on color, and even those that look like you would do you wrong.
That's right. That's right. That's how most people are.
And so you really should be, as Malcolm said, judge people by their deeds, not by their skin color. Those things that you may not be aware of that he also shared. Because even he became even more of a person, a dealt with all race and colors. So I'm going to go through this, and we're going to be moving fast because I got so much I want to impart with you all that you're going to have to buckle up your seatbelt. Because we're going to be moving fast, and the material that I have is so enlightening in terms of, many of you never knew that Malcolm X was a poet. And I would share his words, and then you would see those things. And then you would say, I'll be doggone. And they've been right in front of you all along. It's just like when you look through the Bible and scripture, and then someone points out something to you, and it's been there for years. So the book itself is like that. So I'm going to go through some of the paintings that I have worked with collaboratively with Marta. And I should enlighten you as well. Many of you did not know who did the introduction to Malcolm X's book. It was not a black man. You said, what? So many of you thought that. No. His name is right there. His name is Mr. Handler. He worked for the New York Times. It's right there. But that's how many, first of all, I would not assume everyone has read the autobiography of Malcolm X. Because most time people, you get a lot of information and say, well, I don't need to read it. How many in here have read the autobiography of Malcolm X? So we have some. So I'm enlightening those who have read, and I'm going to feed those who have not as well. And so then you can be brought up, then you can see how sometimes we rely too much on information that's out there. And just like a friend of mine asked me, said, well, how many how many people have read a book on Martin Luther King? And I looked at him and I said, I read one of the books. But then I found out that a lot of people have not read a book on Martin Luther King's or Rosa Parks as well. So you get information, but a lot of times you say accept that. So I'm going to go through these paintings right here that Marta, I had to, a collaborative work requires a lot of attention. It requires a lot of being flexible. It requires a lot of give and take, because we all come with our own set of mind, how we want something to look. And that was the problem that even Malcolm X and Alex Haley had. There was a collaborative project, but there was a lot of tension between them until he felt comfortable in terms of accepting each other. And so you have to develop what we call trust. And so they had to come together and then they can develop trust. But it took them quite a long time, and I mean about 6 months or more, to develop that. And so I had to get Marta to see colors even a different light. It was hell. It was very difficult in terms of bringing her along, because she would like to see a lot of things in this brownish tint type of effect. And so this is a transformation of her. And then I started looking at all the other work that I've been seeing on the internet. And I've been saying, God, I can't believe it's the same person. Because I've seen that she has grown that much by working even with me in order to see colors. And I never said it before. And I said, gosh, is that the same person? And so this work right here is called an art documentary work. Now, let me tell you how important this is. These are museum pieces in terms of, thank you. I got an assistant over here. This work itself of Alex Haley, this is the 100-year of his anniversary. Now, this is a very important work. What Marta used to do before I upgrade her thinking and consciousness, I'm giving you some key words, consciousness. Then you say, well, consciousness. I hear that a lot. Consciousness is awareness. And when you develop a person's consciousness, they can develop their own world and see things differently. Every time you use consciousness, the world does not exist without consciousness. And when you do that, we see things differently. But when a person's consciousness is not developed, it becomes suppressed. You're in a dark state. And that's what even Malcolm, King, and a lot of other great leaders, Gandhi and all these people, they were raising the people consciousness. So if you really want to be enlightened, your awareness level can create anything, because if an artist has a blank canvas, and how they see things, they can create a whole other world on that canvas. So a work like this has never been done before, and she's one of the first. And what do I mean by that? This right here gives Alex Haley a whole legacy. This is a museum piece. If you come here, like Marta had, it was kind of funny to me, but it wasn't. And then I said, I had to calm myself and start to recognize that she didn't know. And a lot of times we are too hard on people who don't know. You have to walk with them. And so this is the tree of life. So she had the tree of life over here on this side, and this is where it dies. The tree of life starts at the beginning of a person's life. Everybody creates a tree. That's your beginning point. And so he comes through here. Now this story tells you, She has him as a baby. She has him in his childhood. Then, a lot of people don't know, he was one of the greatest writers. The autobiography of Malcolm X and Roots are the only two books on Time's 100 greatest list of history. That's how important this work is. They're the only two. Alice Haley is the only author to receive 2 awards as being one of the greatest writers in America history. She has 2 books. No other person has achieved that. And so, a lot of people may not recognize he was a dropout. He been to college, so she got here, Elkhorn. See, I could tell this story by looking at this with all these kind of notes. He went to college, Elkhorn, 1 year, dropped out. Then he goes to Elizabeth City State over in North Carolina, drops out, 2nd year. I'll tell you, they never been to college. His father was a principal, mother school teacher, and so his father told him, this is how you got to work with somebody's mind, like when you see something they're off. I don't care who it is. You have to do something to develop who you are. So his father told him, you need to go into the military. So he was in a Coast Guard. Now this is the man who became the greatest writer in America history. And so he goes in the Coast Guard trying to figure out who he is. See, every time we bring on a child from another generation, all of us, we try to help them to figure out, who are you? And this is one of the problems that many of our people have had, is figured out who we are. And that is the #1 philosophy, even in the Bible, know thyself. And so even you could come from a strong background and still don't know yourself. I don't care. You on a journey, every child that comes on this planet. We are on a train of life. We don't know where it's going to stop and where it's going to get off. We are all on a train of life. And so he goes into the U.S. Coast Guard trying to figure out who he is. There are 4 W's that you should understand. Most people are given 3 W's. Watch this. They say, well, and you are misled. They say, where you been, where you are, and where you going. Have you heard that before? That's wrong. The other W is missing. First you got to know who you are, to know where you are, to know where you've been, and know where you're going. Because if you got that one missing, you're going to be still wondering like without a rudder. You got to get the first one together about knowing who you are. And this is the principles that was passed on even through what you may have heard of the Nation of Islam. They were the four W's. Gregory Reed did not know all this. I had access to papers. And then I started to look at those. So he goes into here in terms of the Coast Guard. And then it took him, how did he learn how to write? He still don't know how to write now. He still doesn't know anything. He started writing for the other soldiers that were in the Coast Guard. He did that, and he would write love letters for them. This is the development. See, you got to be patient with a person. You got to be patient. So he's learning how to write. Now this story, all this is integrated in his artwork. He's in the Coast Guard. Pictures here, some of these letters of his writing is in his picture. This is a museum piece. And then he comes out It took him 20 years, 20 years to figure out who he is. He has stories from his grandmother, the stories that you used to hear that he would talk about, but he didn't know how to put it together. So you can have something but still don't know how to handle it. We get things, but we don't know how to handle it. And so you got to bring them along, just like a lot of times people want to do something. And that's why even those the missing chapters that you were seeing up there, we were not ready for the missing chapters. Our minds were not developed yet. And I tell you what. So it took him 20 years learning how to write, to find himself. Got to stay on course. So he comes out. They created a position for him. He became the first chief journalist, and that position still exists today for the U.S. Coast Guard. He created the position. They started to see his talent. After everybody was lined up for him to write letters, these love letters, and I have even access of some of those. So I even shared certain things like that with Marta to be integrated in this painting. Comes out, and then he comes over here, and he starts to takes his family. That's why this picture, this came from, I represented the Atty family in getting them together on certain digital things, and Bill Helly became the best friend of mine that stayed at my house. That's Alex Helly's son. I've been very blessed and fortunate that some of the greatest people have come to my soul, that I became a collector of them for many years ago. And you can hear, I may mention some as I develop this. So he comes over here. This is him taking his family in a Ford in 1953, coming out, and he comes in, he starts to write a Reader Digest. All this is in this paper. Reader Digest wrote, writes an article. One was on, I put this one in here, Marta, it's the man who wouldn't quit, was his brother. Took him a long time that when he went through law school, and I represented him in Convergence. So, comes over here, and then he's getting his tools together. Now this is it, all this other stuff. The greatest story of any human being is not what they achieve, it's their journey.
Yeah.
See, we like to look at how many awards you got, and what have you picked up. The greatest journey of anything, circumstances and conditions mold a man. You don't make them yourself. We are molded by our journey. And that's why life is a journey. So you like to say, oh man, someone, oh they got that. And then people get resentment, jealous, all of that because somebody got something, but you should look at what their journey was. And that is one of the reasons why I am so delighted to even be here, to speak here, and without being disrespectful, to be in an environment of this nature, of this place, of Charles McGee, to have the foresight to even buy a building when artists don't be buying buildings. I don't understand that. I've been trying to figure it out for the longest, when most people who are educated online and artists generally spend more time creating things than to have a foresight to buy something. This is a very unusual place that is historically transferred. And then to have a child come along to transfer, to make the transformation. That's, in case you all don't know, that's April McGee back there. And so, this is a very precious moment in time. That's why I'm delighted, because other venues I have spoken on are far greater, but this is the type of work that I need to be doing. This is the type of work. So he comes over here, so Alex Haley comes, he starts to write for Reader Digest. They had 3 million subscribers. Now, black subscribers, publication like 5 and 2,000 at a time. Now, we got a man of color, if you want to say that, who's writing for a 3 million subscriber subscription publication. Developments too, so she has this in here. Then she comes over, got Reader Digest, and then you say, well, why is Elijah Muhammad? See, you don't know the history. You say, well, why is he in this picture? Because he wrote an article on the black Muslims. See, every step leads to a step that can lead you to another door. And that's why even when Marta asked me now, I've been staying all night in order to share things with you all. And it was on a short timeline, but at the same time, you have to be flexible. I have learned, as I have gotten older, you got to be flexible because time is something come to you that you cannot resist. It's going to be a whole other way. It's just something that's amazing. Life works that way. So Marta indirectly and directly led me to you. And then I was thinking about, I said, oh, I don't want to work with Marta because she's rough, she's a tough artist, she's a perfectionist. So we got Elijah Muhammad. She brings out this story in here. See, I told you this is a museum piece. Tell the story. Then she said, well, why is it that, then she got Malcolm over here because that led to him. Then she has Hugh Hefner. You said, well, why is Playboy in here? Everybody looking around, they say, well, why is Playboy? That's why I knew that was going to be the most transformation because everybody looking at this picture said, why is Playboy in here? That's the other door. So then she got Hugh Hefner in here because Hugh Hefner has 3 million subscribers, but black publication 5,000, 10,000. So he picks up Alex Haley. Alex Haley became the #1 writer for Playboy. He brought up all the intellectual articles. He was the person that pick and choose. He was the go-to. And he said, and this will come over, this going to tie into Playboy. That's how important these pieces are. And then so she got Malcolm X, mixed in. This is all tied into this man's journey. He started off as a college dropout before he did. He's a college dropout twice. Didn't know who he was. That information, in order to educate him and learn to deal with a different mindset. Now, Alex Haley, middle class type background, very few blacks were even come from a family of doctors, lawyers, father principal, mother school teacher. Now, his world is starting to become rich. That's why when I met April understood, she understands him quite well, I could see that. When I met April, and I told her the other night, I said, boy, you rich. And she said, yeah. Because of her journey and her exposure. Richness is inwardly. When you are rich inwardly, you can create and you finished piece. I can tell the whole story without no notes. Then you come over here, and then you got Alex Haley and Malcolm working on the autobiography. But let me tell you that picture that many people look at. See, you can see things, but your consciousness is not there yet. Consciousness is memory awareness. You look at this picture and you keep thinking that's Alex and Malcolm. But I'm going to enlighten you right now. You heard the interviews done by two people, right? But why is it there's three cups in the picture? That means that somebody else is in the room. There are three cups. 1, 2, 3. The third cup, I befriended the person. You say, well, how did you know the person? You weren't even there at the time. That's George Sims' cup. George Sims was Alex Haley's best friend. And he was the person that would do all the research that you all may not know. He did the research for Alex Haley. He never liked to be out in front. I met George Sims. Now, see, you start picking up things. I know, I was saying Marshall Lieutenant. Because she's one of the greatest storytellers, really. She is. Yeah. Well, this room has got, everybody in here is important. Everybody in here is important. I don't care how you may think of yourself, but everyone in this room is important. Believe me. And so, you got three cups. I met George Sims when I made the largest acquisition in the 20th century of Malcolm papers. This humble little kid, snotty-nosed kid, stepped up to do something like that in order to preserve something for mankind, for future generations. When I didn't go there for that purpose, I had to go into the space in a very scary situation when they had an auction going on. And that's these pictures all in here of the auction. I made the largest acquisition in the 20th century. There have been no other papers in America of a black man ever selling beyond $5,000. When white papers of a writer, and I shouldn't say white papers, when white authors papers have sold for $2 million. So I raised, reason why no other papers have ever been sold that way, because we did not value ourselves that way. When a person don't value yourself, you're not going to, no one's going to pay for it that way. So I raised the standards in America for black writers and artifacts in America. This place right here. No one ever does spend over $100,000. So she has this right here. So George Sims, that's when I met George Sims. And he taught me a word. See, every time we hear a word can enlighten the soul. He said you got to be vigilant. I didn't know what the word meant. I am a lawyer, but I didn't know what vigilant means. I said, what you mean, vigilant? He said, you got to always be on the watch to deal with things. And many of us have gone to sleep. That's why America right now is like in a position of imploding. That's where all the tension going on. We got people shooting each other. We got schools shooting each other. America's on a position of imploding until our consciousness raises up to reverse that. That's what's going on. It's very pragmatic. And so, all throughout here, that she got this life journey. Then she has, why is it that Coleman Young is in here? How did he do anything? Well, Coleman Young gave Alex the key to the city. You can pass that around. He gave Alex the key. So we're in a room enough, small enough, so I'm gonna let you all be able to feel and touch things. and just bring it right on back. And so she has the key of Alex Haley tying in him to the city of Detroit in this picture. This is this man's journey. And then you say, well, Rosa Parks. The reason why Rosa Parks is in the picture, a lot of men know, you say, well, how did she know? Well, first of all, she was there when Alice came through. But what is disheartening to me is that I represented Rosa Parks, for some of you didn't know, for 15 years. I'm the person that got her the Congressional Medal, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the postal stamp, and I co-founded the museum. The stamp that came out, all that's my work. No. And back it up. When Ms. Parks came to me, I didn't ask to represent Ms. Parks. Ms. Parks came to me. I had prayed for 3 years. She didn't know I had been praying. And she walked into my office. And then she came back. I said, now that you pray for something, watch this. Watch this. I said, now that you prayed for this, now what are you going to do with it? So you pray for something, but you're not ready for it anyway. And so I prayed, and then it took me a while because every time you get something, you got to grow into it when you want something. And so what happened, it took me 4 months in order to get my mindset. And then she came back. I gave her a list of 27 items, what I was going to do to resurrect her. Ms. Parks only asked me to do one thing, and this may pain me. She said, will you help me to change the story, the narrative, critical race theory? She said, let them know that my feet didn't hurt.
Okay.
That's what she wants me to do. That almost makes me cry.
Yes.
Today,
Yes.
somebody asked me and said, let you know my feet didn't hurt. That is painful because when people want to diminish who she was,
Okay.
that a woman could not stand up for herself. That's all she wanted. She didn't ask me for the Congressional Medal. That was not a concern. She didn't like that because she didn't want them to lower her people that way. That's what she asked. And that's why this painting is important when you put something together in terms of an art documentary of not putting anything in there. There's something of value that tells the narrative because each one of these other stories. That's what Marta has in this painting. And so we come up here all throughout the life of him. And this is his legacy. That's why this painting is important. Then you come over here, and this painting is important because it integrates Playboy and the journey. He has Alex Haley. His first business article was on Miles Davis. Hugh Hefner called him and said, I'd like for you to see how you could bring this article. a lot. And so they already had the article, but he changed the pace of the narrative of it. And so he started to interview Miles Davis. He camped out at his place up in New York. And so Miles Davis is the first article. That's where it starts off. So it's a continuation. Elijah Muhammad over here. And we do have his nephew in the room. Right here, right now.
Well,
Yes?
Where is it?
And where is it? Don't tell me to lie.
Back there.
Yeah. No. This family has done great work. So, you got Elijah Muhammad. He's over here. He's a continuation of the story. And then you got Miles Davis. See, Miles Davis, Malcolm X. These are articles of Malcolm's journey in Playboy. The first black playgirl, strike that, lady is right here. These are museum pieces. But she could not do this without someone that understood the timeline and where they go and how to position these. That was my role in being a collaborator in terms of teaching her how to position this work so it has significant and great value that could tell history of timeline so you can eliminate critical race theories. That's what this is about. Which is going to be the next generation that we need to get caught up on is NFT. Yes, Raquan. I gotta say, we have some very important people in this room. All of you all. I got more to come. And then you come up here, she puts all this together. Now, Martin Luther King, you say, well, why is he in Playboy? Then he had to talk to him. Because he could not get his word out to 5,000 people and 10,000 need a bigger base. So they use this platform, as someone would say the word, and Martin Luther King gave Alex Haley the only largest interview he ever had. So I'm trying to tell you from a dropout. And then he comes around and he starts putting all these people, Martin Luther King, and then he interviewed not only black individuals, but white ones as well. So all throughout this journey is Playboy, from Sammy Davis, Jim Brown, Quincy Jones, Jim Brown, Malcolm X, all these different people are in here telling this man's journey in Playboy. This is a very rare piece. So that's what happened. So we come over here, and those are the lost chapters. Now, did any of you know that Malcolm X was a very affectionate person? No. Never. Because a lot of things were stripped out of the book. The other reason why Rosa Parks is in the picture, he put Rosa Parks' name in his book. Look at it. They took her name out of the book. He said, well, why is that? Well, they didn't want to empower this woman from another dimension. So you got these things going on.
they meaning the publishers?
Collaboration.
Okay.
You're right. Thank you. I got a story to tell. Help me out now. So the publishing. So you get all these things going on dynamic while you're not in control of what's happening. And so that's why Rosa Parks is in this picture as well. So you come over here, I mentioned, I said, Did you know that Malcolm was a very affectionate person? I know. You always thought of Tony. All the other stuff that they wanted to put him in a box as being angry, mad, black and white, black against whites, all that really changed and is all documented, but people like to keep focusing on those rhetorical. So, now to back it up to show that he was a loving and affectionate man, watch this. Give me something else to pass around. Storyteller. Now, I mentioned to you about George Sims. Remember that name? Okay. I'm going to give you what you're looking at as well. This is the beginning of the letter. This is the letter that when he came back and he went through his spiritual transformation. That's the beginning of the letter. That's the letter that you hear about when he made his transformation from matter. Right? So that's the letter. I just happen to put it on those things when I do museum exhibits. Okay? So what you're getting at are things that are being part of a museum display. Now, in that letter, Marta has his true affection to show that he is a loving person. In the painting, okay, here. At the end of that letter, he tells, they don't put it in the book. They gave you everything else from Marta, but they don't put it in the book. He said, "Dear Alex, give my best wishes to my wife and to George Sims. Please phone my wife if you have time. It keeps her high morale up. Without her, I could never take my place in history." That's how much he thought as being a loving family person. And so what I'm giving you is, maybe it just came out, it's showing you the family side of him, because they did not want to have him showing affection from that journey in order to show the connection of a family man. Now, I'm just showing you how with someone packaging you and you didn't know. And so Alice gave that to the publisher, but they didn't want to put it in there. So then we have the lost chapters. Now, what I'm going to get over to now, I just want to enlighten you about those paintings and how precious those paintings are in terms of preserving critical race theories and in terms of a journey of a person. That's how different and unique that is. Thank you, Marta.
Thank you so much.
Oh, okay.
I'm so sorry, just so that I can get it right. These are the letters
That's
right before he made his, what are you calling it?
That's his transformation, his spiritual convergence.
Got it.
That is the actual letter. That's his handwriting. That's his handwriting. And so you don't have all of it, see. You got all the other pieces here. So I wanted to show you the beginning of it and the end of it. And then you see George Sims is who Malcolm is writing the letter to, and then you also see the three cups. See, there are three cups in that room. And so everybody been thinking that the story is told that Alex Haley interviewed, but when I sat down with George Sims, he told me, he said, "No, I don't want to get over with all being out there." He said, "Alex would give me all the questions, what the questions are. I had to do the research. Then I would come back and we would sit there in that room." See, the story I was told to two people. I'm giving you behind the scene. And he would prepare that. George Sim was Alexander's best friend in their childhood. They grew up together. Always someone that you gotta have that you can trust. You always have someone that's reliable. And stop trying to think you're gonna do something great by yourself. Then you won't happen. Okay, now, you came here as well to be enlightened on the poetry side. And you say, well, how do you know that Malcolm wrote poetry? And it's all in the book. It's just been carved out differently. It's there. That was the benefit of Alex that was educated from learning as his journey how to be a writer, how to untangle something. Now, I am not a good writer, and I know that. I know where I'm weak at, and I know how to support that. Ms. Parks and I became the first person to get the Image Award when I wrote a book in this state. Then I wrote one for President Obama, then I got another Image Award. Now I got around about 12 different writers awards. I'm the only person, the first person to receive the American Book Award in Michigan. But I'm not a great writer. I know where I'm weak at, but I know how to put it together, and I know how to get somebody to clean it up for me. And that is being able to know how to work with others. Now, when President Obama, when I got Ms. Parks the presidential award and the Penn Award, I thought I had grew into a position to get Alex Haley the Presidential Freedom Award. What I found out when I studied that, they don't give those awards to true activists. I had to overcome 8 presidents to get Mrs. Parks hers. You say 8 presidents, what do you mean? 8 presidents denied her until I popularized Mrs. Parks. I had to make her popular. And then, when you are in a state of not causing harm, they will look at you. So it was a shift in time. Time is everything. Yeah. And so now we're going to come down. Now when I read The Dreams of My Father, and this person named Dr. Otis Stanley, he's not here, he used to be a superintendent in Detroit, assistant. I trusted him. He would work with me on all the writings of Malcolm X. And I said, boy, this is poetry. Now, I got the writings. Now, you say it's from, he had writings in the unpublished parts of all throughout. Alice would collect those writings. He collected them, like when they interviewed, and Malcolm X would be doodling, and he would come down, and then things would not collect. And so then that's how those writings started to unfold. And then he'd type them out. And I started looking at this, I said, and Dr. Stanley said, yeah, I said, this is poetry. He said, yeah, he said, Dr. Stanley was an activist. He said, oh yeah, he said, that's Malcolm. He understood. Then, so I started on a journey. I went on a journey. I started looking for signs of it. Then I see in the President Obama book, he said, I didn't know I didn't develop my blackness. He said, James Baldwin didn't do nothing for me. Du Bois didn't do nothing. He said, until I read Malcolm. He said, Malcolm's and his poetry, and his poetic worship. Go look at the Dreams of My Father, and you'll see what Gregory J is saying. Don't take my word for anything that I say. Just go check it out. And so then that was another sign. Then Manny Marco, in his book, did another confirmation. He said, when Malcolm was in prison, It's in this book. He said, I just love poetry. This is Malcolm talking. I just love poetry. So in there, he comes out, and so I started getting all these different signs. Then I went back and started studying the material, started picking it up, and then I was able to put together his poetry. So there's a book, the anthology, X Anthology. I have people like Lady Giovanni, Sons of Jazz, Hockey, Melody, Last Poets, Amir Baraka, a lot of different poets who made contributions to this material. And one of the ones that I fell in love with was a guy named Larry Jeffy. He said, Larry Jeffy said, who is he? He's a full lord in Florida. He's Jewish. He was in love with Malcolm's work, and you got to see it. And I will share some of this stuff. Now, so I started looking at this, and one of the most famous words that Malcolm, that I'm going to enlighten you of, is to be or not to be. If you come in and have a seat, come on. That's one of the next future genius that y'all just walked in the room. You think I'm just talking and talking. I don't give credit where credit is not due. And so what we have here, to be or not to be, that is the question. Now, I've seen that. Do any of you know what to be or not to be is? Do you know what it means?
Well, it's to be alive or not to be alive.
Hey, man, that's a real quote.
Yes,
That's true.
he's a poet who wrote all of those alive under a painting.
Thank you.
I could love you.
See, to be or not to be, that's a very dangerous statement in a way of a person committing to something. And I'm going to share it. That's just like Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me death. See, it's the same thing come up, and then what the kids say today is like what it is what it is.
It is what it
It is. See how it has evolved. But when you look at things and then you say, why is that? Why are we seeing that? Because of the fact is that is that Malcolm did not want to continue to live his life in such a humiliating way. And so I'm committing myself to be this way or not to be. I'm not going to accept that. Now you understand it. Now, what's so strange about that, I'm saying now, Malcolm studied great writers. See, it was not. You're talking about color. Look at this mindset. I'm trying to help you understand. You got to get away from color and look at people and judge them by who they are, as opposed to looking at skin complexion and thinking you got it right. And so then what happened, Coleman Young is tied to that. Now, Marta got into that picture again, right? You said, well, why is Coleman Young? This is right here, this book is on Hamlet. Coleman Young had over about 40 volumes of Shakespeare. Coleman Young is not a college man. He studied Shakespeare. You said, well, how do you know? I bought the books and I made a gift to his son about May 16, May 24th. Marta was there. So this is one of the volumes. It's now, you said, well, Coleman Young, only thing I heard about him, that's why he did all that cussing. And so then I looked in the book, and then I started seeing some of how Coleman Young would put together his poetry. This is a book called The Quotation of Mayor Coleman Young. And so what I'm getting at is imparting to you, when you see something, look beyond that. Look beyond in a way, there's something deeper than stop looking at it from the surface. That is coming in. And for instance, he made a statement, he would say, and this is a statement about what's happening here. He said, when you look at the reality of the situation, I think only the future for black people in this country has got to be in coalition. See, you don't even start to look at things here. Not in head-to-head conflict with the white majority, or else it would be counterproductive. So all these type of things that came from studying other great minds of writers. Now, in Malcolm's, this is one of the statements, thank you, Marta. Only after the deepest darkness comes the greatest light. After truth comes the greatest joy. And after slavery and prison comes the sweetest appreciation for freedom. People come up with statements, the distance. How many know what a light year is?
Illumination, intelligence, spirituality.
Who said that? Lord have mercy. How many distance is that? Do you know?
Well, it depends on how many light years it is away. If it's 10 years away, it takes 10 years for us to see it here on Earth.
How many miles? That's
I don't know.
So you're talking about over 6 million miles.
92 million miles.
So, a light year is measured at 186,000 miles per hour.
It takes for a light year over 6 million. So what is it? There's nothing that travels faster than light. Then Malcolm comes up with something. He said, the Negro and the bourgeoisie, we are so close together, but we're light years away. That's why you look at the words and you put them together. The words don't mean anything until you look at the meaning and how you put them together. But how we can be so close, and then we light years away, that's why millions are being shot at. You can look at a person and be so close in one way, but then you just be so far apart. Now in the letter, of that famous letter, is that there's poetry in that letter, but you never looked at it from the poetic side. Now, Malcolm said that, it's just like when I was coming over here, I use these principles myself. Highway get work, they put a detour sign, you can't get over here, you can't get there, you gotta go zigzag in different ways. You gotta be flexible in life. And this is Malcolm's words, that you got, one thing that I learned is to have flexibility in my life. Here it is here, which is necessary to reflect the flexibility, and you must go hand in hand in every tunnel of intelligence search for truth. You got to be flexible and stop being rigid. Now, I'm going to take you another way. I'm going to show you what Malcolm is saying and how you pick that up. That even from scripture, even from Paul, from scripture. Paul says it this way, and I'm going to show you. He said, I die daily. See, you need to die daily to let other things go. If you die daily, that means that you're not carrying a lot of old stuff. That's Malcolm saying it another way, that I have flexibility in my life. And that I know that in search for truth, I must be flexible. all of these things in terms of the poetic side. Now, if someone is in here, I can give them $100. Yes, if they know what number, favorite number is. Does anyone know? Do you know or you just don't know the number? This number is 7. And I'm going to show you. You go to the book, you can read it. He starts off in the first chapter. Now I told you, someone else wrote the introduction. The first chapter. He said, I'm my father's 7th child. Why did he make that? Now watch this. And then he comes back, and I'm going to bring it all to you. I'm going to get you, Marshall. I'm going to bring it all to you. He said, then 7 is my favorite number. So when you read the Bible the same way, you know how a minister would do. They go from one chapter, and then they come back over this other chapter, and then they tie it back here to show you the principles. It's the same way, whether you read the Quran or any other thing. When someone is telling you something, you got to follow it, and then you come back another way to bring it back around. And then you can tie it together. He said, 7, now 7 is near the first part of the book. That's like page 10. Then he's on page 400 and something. He talks about 7. Now 7 represents spiritual completion. He said 7 followed me all my life. Now I'm going to show you how 7 followed him all his life. I'm my father's 7th child. And I just about know some of this. And I can do it, but I want to make sure I give it all to you. When I'm my father's 7th child, I was born in a family of 7 children. Now, in that, because his father had 3 other kids and he became the 7th child, I wasted 7 years of my life in the streets of America. I became the 7th grade in a white school, only black person in the classroom. I became the 7th grade class president. Now, he met Elijah Muhammad, who was born on, watch this, 1897, October the 7th. It gets deeper than that. Today, I'm spending the transition years of my life in Boston, and later out. This is Malcolm Bush. And later, Harlem as a human predator, parasite, and leech, for all which I was inevitably a frenzy of self-destruction in Boston, and after spending the next 7 years getting my hands fingerprinted. Then I spent 7 years in prison. He came out in 7 months. 7 followed him all his life. When I came out, I was assigned to term number 7. 7 followed this man all his life. Then I was mentored by the 7th son of Elijah Muhammad. I'm trying to tell you. It gets deeper than that. So I started looking at all these 7. Even when I was assassinated, I was married to Betty for 7 years. Wow. It's deeper than that. 7 followed this man all his life. And then, when I broke away from Elijah Muhammad, I sat in my office. Where? At the Teresa Hotel on the 2nd Avenue. See, he does this consciously. Now, before I Black was assassinated. Now you look at that. Now, you may think someone making up something, but then when he says this, then you find 7 is following him all over his life. He comes to Detroit, 7 follow this man. He comes to Detroit, that's the ticket where Rosa Parks was at. Malcolm X was there. He comes here 7 days before he was assassinated. Now, when we came to America, those were the numbers. 7 numbers are exact. And then they had him at 7:30 of his time. So he didn't know when he left Detroit, after they had burned down his house, he comes to Detroit. 7 days later, he didn't know that was going to be his last day. So 7 followed this man all his life. And then when you start studying it, you'll find 7. When he went to the draft board, he filed as a conscientious objector. And he said he was a Muslim, and they didn't know what that meant, so they interviewed him. Then what happened, they said, okay, they gave him a 7-year permit. I'm not trying to tell you what's happening. And you say that. And then they gave him the number, go in the book, they gave him the number of his deferment number, when it's turned down, it ended in 77. I'm just trying to show you the power of 7, that he felt it himself. Because when he broke away from the Elijah Muhammad, it was Elijah Muhammad's 7th son that told him about those kids. And that so his name is Wallace. I'm trying to show you how things, when someone is spiritually insightful, how certain numbers can follow you around. So that's the 77. Now, what I'm going to do in terms of moving this forward is that I gave you Malcolm made a statement that he wanted to give his life to his people. He said, I give my life to be used to benefit America and humanity. America will learn that the Negro problem is the challenge of American consciousness. This is what's going on now in terms of when people say they want to make it great or go back. It's the consciousness that's going on that causing this implosion of tension that's going on now. That's why you're even having all these hearings. Everything that you can see is going on right now, it just ties in different ways. The Negro is American problem. As long as America ignores the Negro, when you ignore someone, it comes back. America will always be in trouble and never be at peace. If my life story helped free the Negro mind to do for himself, his family, and his community, it would help America. Then the story of my life will help both races in the best interest of humanity to move beyond where we have been and where we are and be of some use to transform America and the world to make it a better place for us all. Now, I'm going to give you something that is rarely ever seen, and that is Malcolm's eulogy. His own eulogy. See, what I have learned is that even from this, I pick up things. We should write our own eulogy. It makes sense. Because you should know who you are. And we should know our journey ourselves. Then let someone else create something. I've been looking at it. That's why even King gave his eulogy when he stated, I like to have a long life, and I know a lot of us like to live that way. But it doesn't matter to me now. But at the same time, that's when you get to a point when you understand your journey and who you are. So I'm going to share that. I shared that in New York. When the first time I'd done that, and it was just something else, really. And it deals with he's going to come up here. Okay. All right. I will be closing out shortly. Thank you. Okay, this is Malcolm's eulogy. It'd be a good time to close this out. There was others that were here. I'm writing this for the best interest of the Negro and the white man in America. This is Malcolm's eulogy. I wasted 7 years of my life in the streets of America. Today, I'm spending the transitional years of life in Boston and labor Harvard, the human predator, parasizing living all originality of pensing for self-destruction in Boston. Afterwards, spending the next 7 years in prison, white America vilified and scorned me today in the news media and headlines over the radio and television as the infamous black Muslim minister. Accused of teaching and spreading the untruth of hate of the white man among my black brothers. No man has so much time life work, none of us, and find his purpose for living. Everything I do now take on a sense of urgency. Today I have not time to write a book merely with the ambition to excite or stimulate some reader's mind. Life mirrors. I have the readers will see in years and chapters to come who have lived as closely as it is possible for a Negro to live with the white man and the white woman. In fact, I consider my life to be a perfect mirror that reflects the attitude of the white man in America towards the black man. In part, in fact, it was what I learned from other white men personally that helped me to change and shape my thought and conscious convictions and positive core values of self-esteem, self-help, self-determination, and self-reliance that totally changed my life to the perspective that I have. Okay. So you learn something new about it. I think that anyone interested not only in the Negro, but in fact in America's interest and future should study carefully how the ghettos are influencing and shaping the Negro attitude today and will continue until America changes. Some 12 million Negroes end up in the ghettos. the Negro experienced the Roman elegance, the Roman glamour, the Roman model of success. Picture youth, this is his poetry coming in. Picture youth, seeing success in dope dealers, con men, hustlers, hipsters, pimps, big cars, negative media images of kind, black on black crime and self-destruction in movies. Picture children growing up seeing parents on the welfare relief system. Picture seeing hope and dreams destroyed. There is no dignity in a despair community in a subsidy looking for a handout. No work to be had peeking on street corners and the breasts of the white community. The black man whole values like a story that leads many of them to failure. The Negro values and minds are rooted in illusion, unreality, and in a condition Negro mind is in an iron-clad box. I give my life to be used to benefit America and humanity, and that America will learn that the Negro poses a challenge to the American consciousness. That the Negro is America's problem as long as America ignores the Negro, and America will always be troubled and never at peace. In my life story, help free the Negro mind to do for himself, his family, and his community. It will help America. The story of my life will help both places in the best and interest of humanity to move beyond where we have been and where we are, and be of some use to transform America. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we need to, the next artist talk is going to be Amanda Koss. So Amanda, if you want to come here and start making your presentation to the TV.
Do you have 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Right. Was that what you read, the second part of his eulogy?
Yeah. Say it again.
Was the second part of what you wrote, I mean, everything that you read just now, was that his eulogy?
Yes. That was his eulogy.
Were you speaking of that literally, or that passage served as a
No, that served as writing with Alex Hill.
Exactly. I think she's asking, was that literally his eulogy at his funeral?
No,
That
was
was
not
that.
at his funeral. That was his writing that he wanted to read his funeral.
Exactly.
Is that in the autobiography?
No, nothing. What I've given you today, this is not in our part. These are the unpublished writings.
He has.